The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Gabriel D. Vine from Future Rant.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me.
Tone Vase from Liberty Life Trail.
Hi everyone, coming to you live from sunny Acapulco.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to Issue 1. Issue 1, Satoshi Patents? Craig Wright, the Australian academic who previously claimed to be Satoshi Nakamoto, the inventor of Bitcoin, is back in the news this week. This time he's teamed up with a Canadian entrepreneur with ties to the online gambling industry and is seeking more than 400 patents on Bitcoin and blockchain technology. Previously, Wright promised more proof, but did not provide it after seemingly fooling Gavin Andresen with a rigged test that only worked once. Gabriel D. Vine, is Craig Wright the creator of Bitcoin? And is the first thing that Satoshi would do patent everything in a self-proclaimed land grab in an attempt to dominate an entire industry?
I, in general, am going to boycott this subject for this episode. I'm against covering anything about this person. So I'm boycotting the subject. I will remind the listeners and viewer audience that I have specifically outlined my theory that Gavin Andresen was coerced by the CIA to do their bidding against Bitcoin. And he realized he likes Bitcoin, and he realized that the only way that he could get out of the situation was by ruining his own reputation and ruining his own credibility. And he's done that in many ways by, for example, obviously supporting, software that's terrible for Bitcoin, like XT Unlimited Classic. And so this getting fooled thing, I think that was a big fake out to try to destroy his last shred of credibility, and I think it worked. So yeah, this guy's just a faker. Who cares about him? I don't care about him.
I'd just like to remind everyone to give us a thumbs up and a share, and to thank the 60 live viewers for watching us live. And if Gabriel won't address it, I will. Craig Wright is coming after these patents, and you hate to see someone coming after the patents and then claiming to be the creator. That's doubly bad. It's like he doesn't want his own invention to succeed. That doesn't seem very much like the creator. Tone Vase, your thoughts on Craig Wright?
All right, guys, I just adjusted my camera. Hopefully it'll pick up less of the sun. I adjusted it down. Oh man, so I might have fifth on a future Gabriel answer. I don't want to do it on this answer now. I'm not as conspiratorial. I don't think that, I mean, Gavin did go and speak to the CIA, but I don't know what happened there. Gavin sure as hell doing a great job trying to destroy Bitcoin, and we'll get to that in the next story, I think, or at some point. But on this note, look, Gavin Andresen got fight thinking that he's Satoshi, and can you guys see me okay, or should I cut the video feed?
I think we're having trouble hearing you. I'll check the chat too.
Check the chat. I don't want to cut the video feed. Much trouble logging on from here. But hey, it would suck to have to cut the video.
The chat asks how many pina coladas you'd have. I think it's probably skipping pretty badly.
Say again?
All right, try it again now. What about Craig Wright?
All right. Was it bad before with the video?
Yeah, it was. They're all describing how it's bad. They say it's like DJ Jazzy Jeff is chopping and screwing with Tone's feed.
Oh man, that sucks. Anyway, Mexican internet's what we get.
But you sound good now. We can hear you.
I'll turn when I'm not speaking. All right. So I was with Gavin speaking Craig Wright Satoshi, and then Gavin had like me convinced that Craig Wright Satoshi. That really sucked. That ruined my credibility for like a week. Anyways, I'm still pissed about that. So I don't think he's Satoshi, and I can't believe this nonsense constantly keeps coming up. I don't even know why Gavin Andresen is relevant anymore. It's so like frustrating. People still give Gavin Andresen all this credit. Look, he's a developer. He was the top developer of Bitcoin at a time when no one wanted to develop Bitcoin. He was the best man for the job. It doesn't mean he's great. It just means he's the best man for the job. If me, you, Thomas, or you, Gabriel, if we ended up on like in the middle of in some African village that has never even seen electricity, we would probably be the best doctor that village has ever seen. It does not mean we are the best doctor in the world, okay? It just means we're the best doctor for them. So at the time when Gavin was in charge of Bitcoin, for a little while, he was the best developer Bitcoin probably has seen. He's still relevant really bothers me. And he, anyway, we'll get to him again later on. I just hope this Craig Wright thing would eventually go away. You know, as much as I hate the IRS authorities, life would be sad if they actually got him the day after he came out to be Satoshi.
I agree. We're all tired of the Craig Wright story, but you know how the media is. Satoshi has access to all those coins, so they have to know. And now the legal claim of the patents. He's making claims on these patents. We have to assume he has some kind of early papers, something that's convincing people that he has some kind of claim to these patents.
If he wants to prove he's Satoshi, just move the goddamn coins.
We have to. The theory that I'm on here is that he's the Fredo of the Satoshi bunch. He was always the weakest link. He was always following Johnny around. Poor Fredo.
Right.
And now Fredo is trying to prove that he's the boss. And he doesn't have the keys. He can't sign the things. He doesn't know the real technical decisions, but he has this outside level of knowledge enough to be Fredo. And so he's going to try to claim the patents and get the kingdom. And if Johnny doesn't stop him, if nobody stops him, what do you got?
So Roger Ver might disagree, but I have a feeling that if Craig Wright is Satoshi, he should have enough money to pay the transaction fee to move that money fairly quickly.
If he moved any of the Satoshi money, he'd clearly be either Satoshi or on the team. People in the chat are discussing if software is open source, can he take it back? Not exactly. I mean, there's other versions of the software they could make. I think that the way these patents are looking are more of a general thing on the blockchain space. So like Litecoin would be using Bitcoin's technology, and under this new paradigm, Craig Wright's Bitcoin company or whatever could sue Litecoin. They could sue AOL coin, whoever the next big coin is that has the deep pockets that they can go after. That's what patents are about, right?
Let me ask you something. If he decides to sue Litecoin, who the hell is he suing? Charlie Lee that has a job at CoinDesk? Who is he going to sue?
Obviously, that's a start, but I think what you're looking for is the next branded Litecoin, maybe something like a later topic. We're talking about the Brock Pierce ICO. Maybe he goes to Brock Pierce and he says, hey, I own a patent on all of these ideas that you're using to underlie your new technology, and you're going to pay me a license fee. And this is, classic patent trolling. We have this on the internet, things like podcasting, playing episodes in order. Somebody has a patent on that, and they're trying to enforce it by suing podcasters who play their episodes in order. It seems really simple, but if you think about Bitcoin, you think about blockchain, adding transactions to a blockchain. If he has any kind of early art that could prove a court that he invented this or that he was there, or I don't know how much he has to prove, but he must have something.
I don't know how much longer this whole paradigm of intellectual quote unquote property is even going to last. I mean, it's it's totally ridiculous on its face on a philosophical level, in my opinion, and it's extremely expensive on a legislative level, not legislative, on a judicial level, and it's also extremely expensive on an enforcement level. It's only used to enforce really messed up stuff. I mean, it's just so totally ridiculous. It's a paradigm that was pushed through by the entertainment industry, and it's being applied to so many different things. I think it's total BS. I think the ideas are abundant, and they're also free.
That's part of what they're doing here, is that it's only expensive after the fact. What they want is they want that explosion of new ideas, and then afterwards they sue 7 of the 9 ideas out of existence. That explosion is the capitalism. That's what they want.
Right, but the thing is, you're not going to encourage innovation with any of this legislation. In fact, it only just puts a cap on it, creates blocks, and it creates unfair things like monopolies. I don't believe monopolies are a natural result of the markets. I think they're created by legislation. So this is just yet another sign that this guy's just a troll. So can we move on topics now?
We can try to move on the patent troll topic. Just to round out, people are talking about open source in the chat. Open source is kind of like publishing. You publish your code under a license, and once the code is published, it's kind of stuck with that license. Depending on the license that you choose, and you have to go into more detail here, the Berkeley license, the BSD, different licenses, depends on whether or not commercial products can use that code. A lot of the code has to stay open, and that's the beauty of open source, is it stays open, many hands work on it, et cetera, et cetera. But there's lots more we could talk about on that subject. But let's move on. Exit question. Despite what we may believe, will the patents be approved? Gabriel D. Vine, yes or no?
I don't care. Boycott subject.
Tone Vase.
Will be approved. Government doesn't even know what Bitcoin is. Like the SEC has been waiting for 2 years to make an announcement. There's no way the patent office is going to know what the hell Bitcoin is. They're gonna delay that decision for a long, long time, just like the SEC.
All right, your audio is exploding through with your video. I'm going to say yes. There are many courts that are not the U.S. court. One of them will approve it. Will they be bribed? Will they be taking on Bitcoin as an official currency as part of the deal? I don't know, but there are many courts. If they have any kind of convincing documents, which I must assume they have to continue this claim, someone will approve it. We will fight this fight again. Moving on.
Thomas, should I re-answer my question?
We heard most of it.
Oh, okay, good.
Let's see. Everyone says, you're at the beach, blah, blah, blah. All right, moving on to issue 2. Issue 2, Bitcoin price surges. The price of Bitcoin rose above the price of gold for the first time ever. There are many explanations for the fledgling cryptocurrency's new valuation, including increased demand from China, the possibility of a Bitcoin ETF, and continued supply problems following Bitcoin's recent halving. The Bitcoin ETF decision is on March 11th, a mere 8 days from now. Will this upward mobility continue? I ask you, Tone Vase.
Yes, I think it will. I think basically the way speculative trading works in general is you don't buy after the event. When the event happens, it's too late. You got to get in earlier than everybody else. And everyone's starting getting in like 2 weeks ago. That's why we already had the pump. We had one pump that was probably good enough to get us to where they wanted the price to be, like around 1250, 1300, going into the ETF. But the pump happened like way too early. Happened last week. So then they took their profits, and then they realized, holy shit, we got so much more time. We can pump it one more time. So people are now speculating again. There's actually betting places. that have it 50-50 of Bitcoin approval, that is ridiculous. I give them a 5, maybe 10% chance that the ETF is going to be approved. I give them like a 45% chance that it's going to be not approved. And I give them like a 55% chance that it's going to, they're going to just delay it again. So I'm going to go 5% for approval, 40% for a no, and 55% for we need more time to think. And I like how people are constantly tweeting at me, Tone, you're an idiot. They can't delay it again. They have to make a decision. When the hell does government ever have to do anything? Anything? The Supreme Court can delay a decision for years. They won't get to any other cases, but no one forces them to say anything on any day. They can just say, well, you want a half-assed decision or you want us to give you the right decision, right? It's not like a sporting event where eventually the referees have to decide on a call. This is government. They don't have to listen to you. So yeah, so my view is it will be pumped one more time. We're looking at somewhere between 1,300 and 1,400 a day or two before the ETF announcement, potentially as high as 1,500. And then the selling is going to begin 24 to 48 hours before the 11th. We will be doing this episode one more time on the 10th, I believe, right, in 7 days. So we'll get to see it. I think that the price is going to pump. It's going to drop going into the decision. And then no matter what the decision is, it's probably going to drop some more. Even if the ETF is approved, if we're so high up, there needs to be a pullback. But the ETF is not going to be approved. I will be on the show in 2 weeks, and I will eat it. I will eat it if it gets approved. That sucker is not getting approved. All right. And I don't know what else I can say. So I'm expecting the price to drop from a high into the announcement, drop some more after the announcement, and then the reality is going to set in, and then we go back to new highs.
Pump it, baby, one more time.
Yep.
Some defensive selling. Gabriel, Devine, your thoughts on the brand new Bitcoin price?
Well, it's interesting that Tone brought up the SEC decision on the 11th, or I believe perhaps on the 14th, Monday, not sure, or 13th. But in any case, the
11th is a Saturday. It is pretty odd. I don't know that we're going to get news on a Saturday.
I think 13th. So I actually set up a little poll in Twitter. It's still open. You can all vote. So go to my Twitter at Gabriel Devine and check out my timeline. Scroll down to after the SEC decision on the Bitcoin ETF on 3/11, the Bitcoin price will. Now, once again, this could be the 13th, but I put 4 options. None of them is Tones, which is drop, then drop. So drop beforehand, then drop. Well, I guess this is my poll is for after the decision. So the 4 options are drop, short squeeze, drop, then squeeze, and squeeze, then drop. Currently, drop, then short squeeze is in the lead with 34%, followed by drop at 31%, short squeeze at 28%, and hardly anybody thinks squeeze, then drop at 7%. So most people are thinking drop, then squeeze. I actually personally think that to be the case too. In other words, a drop right after the decision, no matter which way, and then kind of a bunch of buying, wrecking some shorters with a big short squeeze, within 24 hours. But, this is, of course, a very vague poll because the timing could be 3 seconds, could be 3 days, could be a day. Who knows when this stuff's going to happen? Just like Tone's predictions, he's saying XYZ is going to happen. Does he mean an hour beforehand? Does he mean, 0.1% drop? And then, anyways. So it's hard to say what's going to happen in the future, of course, but I will say this. I'm not necessarily in agreement with Edward, for whom I have a lot of respect. Really smart guy. Love his videos. Renegade Investor UK. Great tweets. Excellent videos on YouTube. I really love the guy. Very, very intelligent. I'm not really so sure. I think he definitely feels that the psychological barrier of gold ounce parity is going to cause us influx of money due to a media surge. And maybe he's right, but I'm definitely always, pulling everybody back to the reality of the situation, which is the Bitcoin unit and an ounce of gold have no relation to each other. So the milestone is meaningless on a basic factual level. So
And
yeah,
that's
but I think
also assuming the
the
kind of media that people who are into gold read.
right,
So
exactly,
I
which is
mean, how big is
mostly
that
not.
anyway? Yeah, I mean,
Mostly not. Yeah, but I think that the all-time high, of course, is extremely, extremely important. We've ripped through the all-time highs of anybody who was the very, very stupidest people who bought Gox right before the crash. All those people who actually got a hold of their Bitcoin are now in the black if they didn't do a lot of trades for losses in between.
the answer was you had to buy and hold. It was buy and hold. Yeah, even the 800ers, the 1000ers, even like people that bought at 1100 are seeing a little bit of profit now. So as long as you held. Let's move on to the exit question, even though Tone's already answered it, but let's just give me a straight up two numbers. What are the odds that the ETF will be approved? Tone Vase.
I give it 5%. 5%.
5%. Gabriel Devine.
Well, I've been saying 50-50 for a while just because they've given zero indication in either direction. It's so new. It's so completely, it's so hard to say. However, not only Tone, but also Vinny Lingam, who's made some very, very accurate calls, and a couple of other people on Twitter have been expressing their doubt about the approval. And I would say that my opinion about whether it will get approved or not has dropped from 50-50. Just randomly, my gut feeling, I'm going to give it 20%.
The answer is zero. There is 0% chance that they approve an ETF where the Winklevi hold the coin, name the price of the coin, and run the ETF. There's too many Winklevi in these buckets. It's not about Bitcoin. It's about the structure. Moving on.
That makes sense. That makes
See?
sense.
I know. Moving on to issue 3. Issue 3. Gavin Andresen voices support for Bitcoin Unlimited. In a tweet this week, the former Bitcoin Core developer and Bitcoin Foundation member described Bitcoin Unlimited as a viable, practical solution to destructive transaction congestion. This comes on the heels of a bug in Bitcoin Unlimited, causing a BU node to lose 13.2 Bitcoin, valued at $12,000 at the time. Is Andresen right? Is SegWit a little too late, providing only a small bump to 2 megabytes that Andresen claims will be eaten up by the time the code reaches the wallets? Gabriel Devine, is it time to switch to Bitcoin Unlimited?
Well, I'm tempted to pull a Theo here and just be really sarcastic and pretend like I'm a big Bitcoin Unlimited supporter. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be honest. SegWit is extremely well tested. It's some of the most well tested. In fact, it's definitely the most well tested BIP ever, Bitcoin Improvement Protocol, or proposal rather, ever to come up for for usage. Maybe the idea to allow the miners to signal their support with hash rate for activation might not have been the best choice, and now the community is exploring other options, which I think is great. Mining, the pools are rather centralized, so you've got some big players that are, controlling huge swaths of the hash rate, even though individual miners that are in the pools may or may not want to signal either way. It's really the pool operators. So by giving the signaling power to the mining hash rate, you're really giving it to pool operators, of whom there are very few. So I think SegWit is by far the best option in the short term. But I would like to say, I think Bitcoin Unlimited is current in its current form is obviously not even close to ready. I mean, it's like really, really far from something that's usable that would, be that would not result in an accidental hard fork and God knows what other, bugs and problems. But I would like to say that unlike Bitcoin XT and Classic, which were just hack jobs, just basically power grabs full of, completely ridiculous things like blacklists, and Mike Hearn and Gavin were, just really so egregious as to almost be trolling us. Unlike those proposals, I do believe that some of the philosophy going into Bitcoin Unlimited will be of use to the Bitcoin software project moving forward over the coming years. I think that we're gonna have to come up with some sort of dynamic, automated solution to Bitcoin block size. And that may be something along the lines of a dynamic block size that's chosen individually by the block creators. Something that is, maybe some long descendant of a Bitcoin Unlimited similar idea, or maybe something so different like segregated witness, where kind of like, oh, this whole idea of signatures, let's just twist it on its head and do something totally unexpected by moving them out of the data into a different place. Some really much more radical change to the protocol in order to allow some sort of flexibility into the block size. So I think that unlike XT and Classic, some of the philosophy behind Bitcoin Unlimited will survive forward. Some of the ideas will inform the next few generations of ideas in order to come up with a way to scale on-chain transactions in a way that maintains decentralization and fairness. So I think Bitcoin Unlimited is dead in the water as a software proposal for now. But I look forward to seeing how we can come up with innovative solutions for on-chain scaling in the future that are far better tested and better thought through and have more time. And, Andresen's a troll. He's burnt all his credibility. Not really sure why anybody listens to anything he says at all. Maybe it's his sunglasses he wore in 2012 in that picture. That's the only thing I can think of.
There's something about a man in goggles. People just trust a man in goggles. Tone Vase, your thoughts on Bitcoin Unlimited?
Can I give this an attempt? Because if I'm going to start a rant, it's better that I'm on video. How is it? How's my sound?
Your sound is good because your video is a black screen, so it's working.
Wait, my video's not working?
Nope, video's out. So that's probably a sign that you've only got bandwidth for audio anyways.
Es un signo. Cool. Es un signo.
God damn it. All right. So, okay, rant starts in 3, 2, 1. Okay, here we go. I have been dealing with this whole SegWit versus Bitcoin Unlimited disaster this entire trip. I've been here like 6 days. This is my first half day of relaxing, and now I'm back to being aggravated over Bitcoin Unlimited versus SegWit. Gabe, I disagree with you 100%. Anyone that has been supporting the fracturing of the Bitcoin network into two coins with Bitcoin Unlimited will not be taken seriously in any way, shape, or form for as long as they live.
Hey, hold on a second.
When it comes to Bitcoin development.
Whoa. I never said anything about hard forks. I never said anything about activating Bitcoin Unlimited. Just some of the ideas behind it, I think, will inform further ideas. That's all I said.
Here are their ideas. Their ideas is to split Bitcoin in two because it worked so well for Ethereum. And no, I am not being sarcastic. That is actually what they say, and that is actually what they think. Look how great Ethereum is. The regular Ethereum is now back to $20, and the new Ethereum is now about to have its own trust from Barry Silbert, okay? So they see this as a good thing. This is a fact. This is not like, I'm not making this up. That's exactly what Jake Smith said. That's exactly what Roger Ver is saying, okay? So I don't understand why they don't want to fork Bitcoin literally like every day so that they have 2 to the 365th power Bitcoins to choose from by the end of the year, okay? So that's these guys. Now,
do they have the mining power to fork Bitcoin? If they had it, maybe they would.
They think they do. Now, here's the other thing. You know how, Gabriel, when you said, well, maybe it will be dynamic blocks. No, there won't be dynamic blocks, because guess what? The biggest miners, F2 Pool, maybe not F2 Pool, but Ant Miner for damn sure, or Ant Pool, they haven't mined a full block probably ever. They don't mine full blocks now. Bitfury and other pools make sure they mine. Every block is like 990 something kilobytes. It's literally as close to 1 megabyte as possible. Every ant pool block is like 800 something. They got like crazy room in that block, and they don't want to put in more transactions. Then you have via BTC mining empty blocks. These are the people that are screaming, we need a 2 megabyte block because the transaction log is backed up. Meanwhile, they never even blocked the full block.
Sean, I completely agree with you that these miners are totally full of shit, and this whole debate is actually, I personally think it's an attack on Bitcoin. This whole the unlimited is completely an attack, and I completely agree with you about these miners. I'm just talking about maybe someday we'll come up with some really groovy solution. Peter Willie, for example, some really smart guys get together, gals, come up with some cool ideas. A couple, 3 years from now, maybe some interesting stuff. We start testing it for a few years, that type of thing. I'm not talking about anything specific.
But isn't the part of the problem if we move scaling to the Lightning Network, then we don't have the problem on Bitcoin anymore? It's a problem of the Lightning Network now.
That's not true. You still need to initiate payment channels with a transaction on chain in general. So, I mean, you can't hypothecate.
But presumably that's much more limited than the idea of using Bitcoin to buy coffee, where you're making these transactions 5 a day, 10 a day. I mean,
of course, but if we, like, as Taj Dryja pointed out in the original Bitcoin Lightning presentation, if we got everybody in the world on Bitcoin and on Lightning, we would need 80 or 450 gigabyte blocks, right? So Lightning wouldn't be enough,
But let's not work backwards. Let's work forwards. Let's move them up slowly. I agree
with that, and I agree with everything that Tone said about all the miners and everything except for his characterization of what I said.
All right, continue the rant.
All right, yeah, my bad on that then, Gabe. Yeah, I'm not even close to done, by the way. Can I do this video? Is this better?
It's good so far. We'll let you know.
Looking good. All
right, let me know. I have to drop the high def camera and went to my laptop camera. Okay, so let's get back to this. These guys, that I can't even begin to describe how dangerous Bitcoin Unlimited is. Besides the sheer incompetence of giving away 13 Bitcoins, okay, because they don't even know what the hell done is intent. Who are their developers? You just see that tweet? It's like Bitcoin Core has like 100+ developers being paid by at least 3 or 4 different companies, plus 100 volunteers, and Bitcoin Unlimited has like 8 or 9 developers. One of them is Jerry David Chan, who I know, who I did not know had I could be wrong. I didn't know he had like that much competency in core development. He might. I would be surprised. I don't think that was ever his specialty. Another one is Bitcoin Errorlog, who I also know. And I like. I had no idea he had that kind of programming specialty and skills. So I honestly think they threw anybody in there who had any kind of contribution. Their developers, I've never heard of any of them. And then Roger starts debate with me saying, these new guys came in and they have control of Bitcoin. Who are the new guys? Somebody replied to that and said, well, let's see. Peter Todd and Gregory Maxwell and Luke Dash Jr. and Vandalier, almost all of them have been in Bitcoin as long, if not longer, than Roger Ver has. Some of them have talk accounts that are older than Roger Ver's Bitcoin Talk account. Show up. These guys have been here for a really long time. Now, the biggest company that supports our core developers by keeping them from getting paid 5 times more money than they are from Bitcoin somewhere on Wall Street, and they're like probably begging them not to quit from all this aggravation. One of these companies, Blockstream, supposedly one of their investors has some kind of connection to the banking industry. I have not had time to look into this. I have requested a list of Blockstream investors. I want to take a look at it myself. I need to make sure this, I know it's FUD, but I want to make sure there is some legitimacy behind the claim that, oh, banksters are funding Bitcoin Core. So what? Even if they are programming open source code. This code is unchecked. Most of those people are paid.
We're starting to lose your video again,
If you have a problem with segregating with I'm calm. Code. Suppose I haven't looked at the evidence that they're definitely being funded by bankers, right? What if it's like some private hedge fund that bought a bunch of Bitcoin and is now funding core development so that their position in Bitcoin goes up? You know, it's a terrible assumption that all banksters are evil. And by the way, on a side note, before I continue, people have on Reddit, especially Reddit, there was like dozens of Reddit comments, maybe not dozens, but it definitely half a dozen. Tone Vase, he's just another bankster with Bitcoin Unlimited. Look, I'm not saying I'm important to Bitcoin, but if you're supporting Bitcoin Unlimited and you think Core is there, like overtake Bitcoin, and you've never heard of me, your opinion could not matter less. You know nothing. You can't.
And remember that sometimes when the banksters invest their money, we don't know what they're doing. Recently, Andresen Horowitz, one of the largest venture capitalist firms in the world, invested in OpenBazaar. We don't know why. Maybe they like the idea. Maybe they want to order something off the second generation that now has Tor. It's questionable. These VCs sometimes invest because they have a friend. The 21 Bitcoin computer doesn't seem to be on track to make any money, but everyone knows Balaji is a major investor, a major player in the venture capital world. And of course you would invest in his project. He's been incredibly successful in the past. A lot of this is track record here.
Right. No, and I agree with that too. But people have to realize, I've been saying for 3+ years, the greatest investment you can make is buy Bitcoin with half your funds, even a third of your funds, and spend the other 2/3 of your funds trying to make Bitcoin into this decentralized machine of value transfer. Okay, so you don't know, like they're assuming everyone's a banker. What if they're assuming that it's like literally a hedge fund that can literally takes people's money and they can do whatever they want with that money as long as it's a good investment. That's exactly what I would do if I was a hedge fund. I would take $100 million. I would put half of it or a third of it into Bitcoin, and the other 2/3 I would give to Bitcoin Core to make sure that they continue to program Bitcoin the way they do. That would be the greatest investment that I could make. All right, so let's get back to the whole bankers thing. So let's play devil's. I'm gonna play my own devil's advocate, right? I'm gonna assume that bankers, as they call them, are funding Core, right? And all of a sudden, everyone is pissed and everyone hates it. At the same time, these same people, I really want to call them a derogatory term, but I'm going to stay away. These same people are praying for the successful approval of the ETF. Guess who's in control of your freaking Bitcoin ETF? It's the bankers you're screaming against. The moment Bitcoin goes to the ETF, it automatically becomes in control of those same bankers. And there's a giant honeypot of all that Bitcoin that is now in control under the SEC and the bankers, okay? So they can start to manipulate the price of the ETF that is going to have an effect on the underlying Bitcoin itself. Let's see what else they want.
I think this is a really good point you're bringing up, Tone, that people haven't thought of before. This is similar to what Professor Hawking said about contacting alien life. We're not sure what's going to happen. All of this money in the stock market could now suddenly enter Bitcoin, exit Bitcoin, enter Bitcoin, exit, enter, etc. We have no idea. They could be shorting or longs, all kinds of things, new effect on the market through
naked
the
shorts.
Exactly. You can do naked shorts as well, probably eventually. Look, it is so bad. I've been against the ETF from day one. Not only is having an ETF a huge, a huge risk that the bankers, the real bankers, can actually have control of a large chunk of Bitcoin. The government now has control of a large chunk of Bitcoin. The moment government decides Bitcoin are hostile and 25% of all Bitcoin is sitting in a Winklevoss ETF, here come government agents at Winklevoss office and say, hey, we really like this Bitcoin. How about this 25% of Bitcoin is now ours?
What does it have to do with Bitcoin Unlimited, Tone?
Well, no, it's the same people. These people are Bitcoin Unlimited people, hate Bitcoin Core because apparently some of their funding came from bankers. And usually most of these people want the Bitcoin ETF to go through to put Bitcoin actually in control of the bank, by control of the bankers.
Now, is this really what we've always been talking about? The early libertarian Bitcoiners are eventually going to lose their control over Bitcoin. This was a beautiful pet project in their backyard, and they owned it for many years. And unfortunately, it's going to, or fortunately, depending how you want to think of it, it's going to grow beyond their backyard. It's far too big for any one group or any one person to own. We all have just a very sliver. We're all involved now. Is this it? Is this how the libertarians lose control through this battle? Can't get Tone. How about Gabe?
Am I breaking up?
Is this your question? Is this unlimited fight? How the okay?
Are they going to bet it all the way that Roger Ver is clearly all in? Bitcoin Core is a conspiracy. Bitcoin Unlimited is the savior. It's clearly like he's not going to come back. These people are.
I think. I don't know. I mean,
very much are hardliners.
Classic in NXT. Andresen came back from that, right? People are still listening to that jackass.
It seems like they came back only to leave again. I don't really know how much I trust them.
Well, I think that actually Vinay Gupta's analysis of the community is possibly a little bit more accurate, where he divides it up into the big L libertarians and the anarchists. And the big L libertarians could be maybe the unlimited people, where they're not as concerned about centralization and statists, and the anarchists are more the cypherpunk hardcore side for whom it's foremost. And I don't think that I think Vinay is correct in his analysis that schism is maybe never will heal. But I don't agree with him that it will prove to be Bitcoin's undoing. In fact, I think precisely that fight will hone the protocol and cause it to succeed that much better.
All right, let's go to Tone. Are the libertarians making us stronger?
Dude, I don't even care about the damn libertarians anymore. Look, it's not libertarians that are taking Bitcoin to the next level. Bitcoin, which I haven't had the time to go through both of the debates, but Roger Ver ridiculed me and Johnny for being savers of Bitcoin and spending crappy money like the US dollars and holding on to our Bitcoin for as long as we can and only spending it when we have to. And then in the beginning of his debate with Johnny, Roger Ver explicitly states that it's the savers that give Bitcoin value. So that's a complete and utter contradiction. Okay. Now, even having said that, it's not the savers that give Bitcoin value right now. It's actually the users of Bitcoin, which no one is actually acknowledging. I'm slowly becoming a user of Bitcoin because now I have my own Exotica channel. And so now maybe I'll actually get some tips in Bitcoin. But it's the users of Bitcoin. If you don't know who the users of Bitcoin are, and no, it's not you buying from purse.io, then please go Google one of my articles. It's called The Top Use Cases of Bitcoin. It's on my blog. Since obvious, because it's not buying your coffee at Starbucks. Wait, let me get back to the bankers because I'm not done. Apparently, the bankers are so evil for handing their money for open source development, yet at the same time, the bankers are so great to control the Bitcoin ETF. Let's see what else bankers do. So how come everyone was so happy when 300 bankers joined the R3 non-blockchain blockchain, okay? Everyone was so happy that the bankers are getting in. What about right now on Ethereum? Everybody is buying up Ethereum left and right because apparently bankers want Ethereum for some reason, okay? So don't give me this bullshit, hypocritical double standard, okay? I don't even believe bankers are funding core development, but I have already requested to see what I can find. I haven't had the time to look at it yet. I'm going to look into the list of all of Bitcoin Core's investors. The thing is, I never cared about Bitcoin Core's investors because they're programming an open source project. You know what you should care about? Who's funding development when it's not open source. That's when it matters. Who cares who's funding open source? It's all in the code.
Remember, the bankers continue to claim that Ethereum is an alternative to Bitcoin. Ethereum that has a creator, Ethereum that you can roll back the chain if you have a problem. Ethereum is their alternative, their solution, their horse.
Well, obviously, though, that's exactly what they want, right? Obviously, people that are supporting Bitcoin Unlimited, they want more centralization. They want this kind of control. They want to turn it into Ethereum. That's exactly what they want because they have a group. They have a group of like 8 developers, and they think this is more decentralized than 150 developers from all over the place.
I just want to point out that the way that you just described open source software is not really that black and white understanding of open source software. Is not really how the world works. In other words, just because software is open source does not mean that one cannot introduce problems, introduce vulnerabilities. Linux is a perfect example of this. Systemd is open source, and yet it's a complete spaghetti hack full of backdoors and problems that have been found over the years. And it was all coded up by Red Hat, which was owned by the U.S. Navy, I believe. So that's not a black and white thing, but it is true.
Yeah.
That
Gabe.
It's true that just because your funding source is from A doesn't mean that you're also going to be, introducing problems induced by A, right?
No, Gabe. I agree with you. But Bitcoin is a little different, right? Because we have 3 levels of fail safes, right? We have core developers that are constantly checking each other. And in this case, bullshit is extremely important. Look how quickly Mike Hearn got exposed for the crap he was pulling in his code, right?
Oh yeah, I agree.
Right.
It's a much higher bar than Linux. That's right.
Right. We have a second layer of control, that being miners. So miners actually have to approve it to go in. But I think there is a bigger layer of control in the nodes, right? So we actually have over 50% of the nodes signaling for SegWit, while only 30% of the miners are signaling for SegWit. I think it's more important for the nodes. The nodes are the people. That's why I already have people. I've been telling people, please run your own node. Like, look up the details, and it's a little. It's a little more nuanced than that. You want to download the latest version of the Bitcoin Core client, and then there is a port that you need to open. I don't want to say the numbers of the port, but there are like
it's 8333.
8333. Okay, I knew it was 83 something. I couldn't remember off the top of my head, right?
So on your router, that's support for. That's the really important step. That's a little bit techie.
Right. Hey Gabe, so maybe you can post the link so Thomas can put it in the description of this video, or you have admin rights. Maybe you can put it in the description of the video how people can set up And I think we should do that from now on with every video, like add it to the description, how to set up your own node and signal for Core or Bitcoin Unlimited or whatever else you want. Because I think at the end of the day, it's the users that need to decide, not the miners. And if the users are telling you 80% of the users want SegWit, the miners are not going to have a choice. The miners are not going to go against the community they're mining for, or they're going to.
That's right. You know, I don't know if you've been following this, Tone, but on
I know I'm going to get up full nodes.
We kind of lost you there, but I just wanted to point out that I know you've been at Acapulco all week, but there is currently a bunch of chatter on the web and on the Bitcoin mailing list and stuff about switching to what they're calling a UASF, which is user activated soft fork, and what they of course mean is the same thing as you mean, which is full nodes activation, full node signaling. So and that's really why you know, the nodes are the ones who relay transactions. They actually check the validity of transactions. People think that miners do that. Actually, miners are just deciding which transactions go into blocks. They get to control that, but they don't get to control which you know, transactions are relayed as valid by the nodes. And of course, that's the nodes. So I think it's really a great move that we've understood that, okay, this hash rate method is probably placing too much politics on the mining infrastructure and it's placing too much power there. It's a little unbalanced. By putting it with the nodes, I think that's a lot smarter choice. I totally agree with you there. And I also just wanted to point out something else, which you only touched on briefly, and I really think it's such an important point and so relevant for the economics of Bitcoin, and that is, you were saying that some of the unlimited supporters that you were talking to were giving you crap for hoarding, giving you crap for holding your Bitcoins and not wanting to sell them. And I think that arises from a fallacy about economics. I believe it's Gresham's law, where they say, you know, bad money pushes out good because it's in circulation. But I don't really believe that that's valid in every situation. And if you want to learn more about that, check out Daniel Kraus's article from the Nakamoto Institute from 3 years ago, I'm hoarding Bitcoins and no, you can't have any. He makes a very compelling and clear argument that hoarding is the primary way that any asset maintains its value. And by spending it, you're just diluting it. You're basically selling it. So yeah, check out that article, everyone. We'll post it in the show notes.
Yeah, can you guys just come on? Well, first of all, Daniel, amazing, awesome. Please read all of his work. I wish I had the time to do it. Unfortunately, I don't. I do need to catch up. Now, hey, so Gabriel, you just explained to me what a user-activated soft fork is. Thank you for that information. Now, here's the thing. Now, I guarantee you there will be enough comments at the bottom of this video calling me an idiot for not knowing what a user-activated soft fork was until about 2 minutes ago. But guess what? I am not a Redditor. I don't read Bitcoin talk. I don't read every story that comes through. I'm busy. I'm traveling. I'm speaking at conferences. I've been teaching a seminar for 2 days on trading. I'm trading myself. Thank God earnings season is over, right? And with that, I still try to maintain some of a life. I don't pay attention to every single thing and every single acronym. But guess what? I've been talking about a user-activated soft fork without even knowing what the hell it was for a little while now because it made sense. It makes sense. I didn't even know that's what it was. I heard the acronym. I even asked Johnny a question. Hey, Johnny, what's a user-activated soft fork? I had no idea that it would be full node dependent. So exactly what I've been saying. This is just common sense. And some people think I'm an idiot for not knowing this earlier, but guess what? I actually think it's great that I figured it out all on my own without needing help from anyone. Not the core developers, not the miners, and no, I am not their shill. I have almost no communication with the core dev team other than like running into Johnny and talking to him and being very glad he did it. You know, occasionally I'll like text Eric Labroso or something. And just recently, I chatted a little bit with Alex Petrov of Bitfury, who's also great. You should check out their work. Like, this stuff is just common sense. Set up a node, signal SegWit, so we can actually scale, and these malleability will be gone. There will be more room in the blocks, and don't believe these freaking miners that are saying, oh, we need bigger blocks. Meanwhile, they haven't mined a full block probably ever. These are the people that are supporting big blocks. It's completely ridiculous. I'm honestly getting very frustrated with this. I already promised on stage, because me and Roger Ver got into it a little bit, if Bitcoin Unlimited becomes the dominant fork, no one will ever hear Tone Vays talk about Bitcoin again. I'm going to remain a content creator, but it will have nothing to do with Bitcoin. I will be out. I almost vowed to do the same if segregated witness doesn't get approved, but because I am okay with the status quo, and I am okay with a $100 transaction if they continue to block SegWit, I'm not going to vow to leave the content Bitcoin space if we have status quo. I'm okay with the status quo. I want SegWit. I am pushing for SegWit. If Bitcoin Unlimited wins, Tone Vays is out. I don't know what I'm gonna do with my Bitcoin, but it'll split in two. I'm staying on the old chain. I'm gonna stay with Bitfury and the 1 megabyte chain. And guys, don't forget, after SegWit gets activated, and if SegWit and Lightning Network don't solve our problems, or if Lightning Network comes too late, we can always hard fork then without contention. I will not create contention if SegWit is running to its full capacity. Miners are mining full blocks and not this bullshit empty block thing, and the blocks are full. I might be on board with a hard fork to 2 megabytes, but I'm completely against it right now, because right now it's contentious. If a hard fork is not contentious, even the core team is going to suggest it. And nobody believes that. All right, now I'm done.
If Bitcoin Unlimited wins, Tone Vays is out. Moving on to issue 4, Venture Capital ICO. Blockchain Capital, a VC firm well known for backing Bitcoin startups and led by Bitcoin Foundation Chairman Brock Pierce, is branching out into altcoins. The firm plans an ICO, an initial coin offering of tokens, which will trade on external markets, disrupting and democratizing the venture capital industry. The firm plans to raise $50 million in the new fund, issuing the tokens through Token Hub, with more details in a month or two. Gabriel D. Vine, are ICOs the future of venture capital?
ICOs, it's a really, really broad subject. It can be done in a lot of different ways, a lot of ins, a lot of outs. It all, and the devil's in the details. I think that there may someday be something that one could consider a fair, equitable, and functional initial coin offering. We haven't seen it yet, I think, probably. And we certainly don't have enough details on this story to judge its viability or its future in any way. But unlike, say, Tone, I think, has expressed his thoughts on this. Unlike Tone, I do believe that smart contracts, possibly app tokens, or just equity tokens, let's call them, do have a very bright future. And I think that they are going to revolutionize the equity trading world. And I think eventually we're only going to have crypto tokens, and we're not going to have the traditional stock markets that we suffer under today, whose fractional reserve and fraud we suffer under today. So I think that it's quite interesting. He's kind of doing a centralized version of the DAO, which sounds like it actually might be more trustworthy in this case. But I really would have to know exactly what the relationship is between the ownership of the equity token and the capital that's getting allocated to the projects and all that, there's a huge amount of leeway in there in that giant umbrella of initial coin offering. So we'll see what happens. It's an interesting space. I would assume that he's probably jumping the gun and it's going to go really wrong because there's so many pitfalls. So get ready for a lot of crashes and hacks, and be very, very, very vigilant and super conservative with your token investments.
And do remember that the problem with the DAO wasn't raising funds. They raised $150 million. People obviously want to invest in a venture capital firm with their Bitcoin or their Ethereum profits. And to be clear, Brock Pierce is a serious guy. He's no doubt gotten some lawyers to work on this, and they must assume that it's going to be okay. This isn't BTC-E or Bitfinex or some random place printing up a token. This is an American-based VC firm, and they'll probably raise the money. But here we go, Tone. What do you think about Brock Pierce and his ICO?
Oh man. Okay, so I'm gonna partially plead the fifth on this one. Can you guys hear me? Should I cut the video?
That sounds good. Just keep going.
Can I put the video back on? Can you give it a try? All right. Let me know if it's not good. Okay. So I'm gonna partially plead the fifth on this one, only because I know nothing about this other than Brock Pierce is doing something with ICOs. Usually I jump the gun and I call everything a scam. That's actually not true. I usually do at least 10 minutes of research, and you'd be surprised the kind of opinion, well, you shouldn't be surprised the kind of opinion I form in 10 minutes of research. Unfortunately, I have done absolutely zero research when it comes to Brock Pierce's ICO thing. So there's really, I really don't want to say anything. As much as I hate ICOs, I agree with you, Thomas. Brock Pierce is a serious guy. He runs an actual VC. He has experience in being a VC. He actually has real lawyers. He has the ear of important people. I don't think he would do this if he wasn't somehow sure. Like, I trust him and what he's doing way more than Vitalik and what Ethereum pulled back in the day, because those guys were nobody. I wouldn't call Brock Pierce a nobody. I would not at all. And honestly, I kind of like Brock Pierce. I don't like his views on Ethereum and the way he was kind of pushing Ethereum, but that's because I'm not a fan of Ethereum. But I'm sure it made him some money, and it made his investors some money. So I want to hold off criticisms any kind. I want to hold off any criticisms on this venture from Brock Pierce. In addition, and I'm only going to say this because it's true, not because I'm trying to somehow impress anyone. About 3 days ago, I don't even remember now, Brock Pierce actually reached out to me to talk to me about this, maybe come on my podcast. I don't think people realize that I run a crypto scam podcast. They just hear they're on a podcast. And I did not have the time to talk to him. As weird as it fucking sounds, I'm like the guy that's like half broke, like trying to like check plane ticket prices every day to get to Mexico to make sure that, you know, like if the plane ticket is $800, I might cancel this trip, and if the plane ticket is like $400, I'm gonna go. And as weird as it sounds, me dealing with this Bitcoin versus SegWit, it was just as much as the last thing I want to do is tell Brock Pierce, look, I'm sorry, I just don't have the time to talk to you right now. As retarded as that sounds, that's exactly what I had to do, because I was just dealing with so much here in Mexico, and Bitcoin and SegWit is just so much more important right now, and that's my complete focus. The moment I get home, or maybe like tomorrow or the day after, when I'm staying in Mexico a few days to attempt to relax, I would reach out to him, and I'm going to try and talk to him to find out more about it. But until I do, it would also be disrespectful, because I know Brock, and I had a chance to talk to him about this and find out some details, but I didn't. So it would be very, very disrespectful for me to say anything negative about his venture at this point in time until I actually call him back. So that's all I can say.
Fortunately, Tone, there is no information really about this ICO. There's no There's nothing to research. There's 3 or 4 articles, all from the same source. But my take on this is that, again, someone official is coming to this market. If last year was the year of blockchains, this year is the year of ICOs. Other people have argued with me. They're saying it's the year of Internet of Things or the year of the Bitcoin comeback. But everybody's got to pick their theme for the year. And it's looking to me like the year of ICOs.
I will comment on this, right? Because everyone knows I hate ICOs. And I think they're pretty much 99% of them have been scammy up to this point. And the only reason I say 99% of them, maybe there was one that I'm not aware of that was actually legit. But if someone wants to name me one, I'm all ears. If Brock Pierce does have a legal team behind him, and Brock Pierce now sets a precedent for the legitimacy of past ICOs, I will be a very, very upset man. In a way, I don't want Brock doing this, because it might legitimize some of the scams, and then he would give them like legal cover because of his legal team for the ICO that he's doing. And then you have these scams claiming, well, if that one's legit, so are we, and they're not. So that's the only thing that I worry about. But again, I don't want to speculate until it would be completely disrespectful to Brock Pierce for me to put him in the same class as all these prior ICOs until I actually, I didn't even know there was no research to do. Again,
we also can't deny we know these guys, and Brock Pierce also works with Jeremy Gardner, who is very successful with his ICO for Augur. No doubt Brock saw that. He saw the success of Augur. Augur goes from kind of a project they're working on to a garage to a fully funded project. I don't know if it's going to be successful, but they are fully funded and they can make whatever they can make.
Right. So that's as much as I can say about the project. And I didn't even know there was no details. Like that's how little I know about this. All I know is like 3 people told me while I was here in Mexico that Brock Pierce is doing something big with ICOs, and that's all I really know. So until I know more, I really have nothing to comment on this subject.
Let's also be straight and assume Brock's not going to watch this show. But if you do, hi, Brock. So,
hi,
Gabe,
Brock.
Any more thoughts on this issue before we move on? All right, exit question. Blockchain Capital will be successful in raising the $50 million. Yes or no? Gabriel D. Vaughn.
Oh, yeah, I bet you they'll raise more than 50.
Tone Vase.
I think they're only asking for 50. They'll probably raise it in about 2 days, and I'm being somewhat generous. They could have asked for 200. They'd probably get it. I mean, Brock knows that they'll get that 50 in a hurry.
The answer is yes. You also have to assume with someone professional involved, they've probably lined up 40, maybe 45 million already. They're just looking for a little cherry on the top and give the normal people a chance to invest in this thing. So who knows how that's going to go. All right, let's go on to the bonus issue requested by the chat. They'd all like to hear our thoughts on Dash. I don't know what to say about Dash. I guess the price has gone to $43. It's the number 3 cryptocurrency behind Ethereum, and this all means something. Dash coin started out as Dark Coin, has this unique masternode structure, kind of interesting, has this bounty type system that somehow pays Amanda Palmer to make endless Dash videos. That sounds kind of cool.
Johnson.
Sorry, Johnson. I think she changed her name. I'm going to go, she has 2 names. But Amanda Johnson, I might have confused. Apologies. But yeah, Amanda Johnson, she probably did really well. I'm going to imagine she held Dash. I hope she sold at this 43 number. This sounds really good to me. What do you guys think? Gabriel, let's go to you first.
I want to go first. I gotta run to dinner. That's why, because there's people catching a flight later. I don't know how to make this quick, but right after I'm done, I'm gonna have to cut the feed. Okay, so Dash, I have a 1-hour video of Crypto Scam talking about Dash. So everyone, please go find Crypto Scam episode 4 Dash. Dash is, to me, Dash is very, very scammy. Now, but that's just me. That's my opinion. So as far as the Dash price goes, so first of all, Roger Ver has made it clear that he has diversified some of his Bitcoin into Dash, along with Monero, Zcash, and Zcoin, which I've never heard of until Roger Ver put it up on a slide. So right there, That creates the Dash pump. Then Roger Ver tweets that he just moved $100,000 via Dash, paying a 3-cent fee, which is, again, like basically, in my opinion, Roger Ver is now pumping shitcoins. Okay, this bothers me. Okay, and he's supposed to be the ultimate Bitcoiner. I have zero anything other than Bitcoin. It's possible I might have some Litecoin in some from like 2013 when we were all into altcoins, and I have no idea where they even are at this point. I probably, I don't know, if I run across the backup, maybe I'll remember the password, maybe. So I don't even care. Okay, so I haven't diversified. Roger's diversified into Dash. So Roger is, I think Roger is significantly responsible for this pump. I am also to blame for this pump. The two debates between me and Roger, and then between Roger and Johnny, were filmed at the Crypto Show remote studio, and they are sponsored by Dash. These videos have been watched by over 10,000 people each video, or close to 10,000 people each video. And throughout, for 3 hours of combined video time, there is a banner there that says "We love Dash." Okay, I am fully responsible for not taking down that banner because these shows were not the official show. So therefore, this is partially our fault. Definitely Roger Ver is involved, and it's just a pump. There is nothing there. The reason why Roger can move $100,000 from one Dash wallet to another Dash wallet is because nobody uses Dash. This is freaking ridiculous. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I got to run to dinner. I can't believe Chris Ellis just joined, and I don't have the time to again, this is like my Brock Pierce thing. It's like I really want to stay and talk, but I really have to run, and it really, really sucks. But Chris, people have been listening to my rants about creating full nodes, and people are creating full nodes. We just have to give them the right details in order for them to set up this node correctly so that they're signaling for SegWit properly. So maybe we can like put out more videos and actually explaining to people how to set up a full node for SegWit support, and then we all do a user activated soft fork. I'm perfectly okay with that. All right, unless anyone has a quick question for me, I'm gonna have to cut this one.
All right, Tone, thanks for joining us.
Later, Tone.
Man. All right, Gabriel Devon, do you want to give us some thoughts on Dash, and then we'll talk to Chris Ellis?
I'd just like to say that Twinkies are really not food, and that one should eat things that provide one with nutrition, and that's not what that is. It's very upsetting to me. Dash, hey, it's a blockchain, and they're trying some things out, and that's cool, and they do a lot of pumping, and that's cool and everything, and they seem to have a relatively centralized development community, which could come and bite them in the ass someday. Whatever. There may be some use for it, I guess, at some point, maybe. But yeah, another cool test net where they're doing different things. I agree with everything Thomas said pretty much. I don't have much of an opinion on it. It's obviously getting pumped now. Wouldn't be surprised if it crashes, whatever.
To answer the guy's question in chat, Tone probably doesn't use Bitcoin at all in a week. He's too paranoid to touch it. He's worried about his money getting in there. But he seemed to be saying that now that he's a cam girl on the Exotica site and he gets tips for doing sexy news, maybe he's got some money there that he might actually spend because it came from the ether. But we're joined by Chris Ellis, who's eating Twinkies. Must mean you're in America because we taught you well. How's it going out there in America, Chris?
I'm great. I'm in the USSA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Donald Trump's America, unfortunately.
I know. Getting over the border was a real hoot. I had to go by the Canadians. They were loving it. It's like, what brings you to Canada for one whole day? I'm just passing through. I want to see Trump's America, MAGA, and going to build a wall, make them pay for it, all that stuff. I had all the lines ready for the border, but they didn't even want it. They didn't even care. I had all that stuff rehearsed. And they didn't even ask me anything about Trump. It was really disappointing. I wiped my hard drive. I did all that stuff because I was like paranoid they were going to go through all my shit. And then they never even did that.
I told you no one cared. I told you no one cared.
Yeah, nothing. He's doing Twinkies. Well, why aren't you eating Lucky Charms? Aren't Lucky Charms like 62 pounds a box in the UK, but they're $1.26 in the States? You should do Lucky Charms. That's the hipster.
You can't even get these in the UK.
Oh, really?
No.
Wow.
The only reason this meme started when I first came to the States with Tom is because of Ghostbusters. Remember the Ghostbusters scene where he's like Twinkies and he makes a joke about it having all the major food groups and everything. It's got fructose corn syrup. That's the only reason I was tempted when I came to DC with Tom to buy some, because I never had one before. And I just remembered it from the Ghostbusters movie.
Tell them about the Twinkie.
It's all about the Twinkie. So
More of a ding dong guy myself.
did we talk about the Dash scam? Did we talk
Well,
about
we just got to Dash at the end, and we just don't know much about it. I mean, it was dark coin. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I
it went to
think
$43 a coin. I wish I had some. I don't have any.
I think dash cams are really good. They can offer you a lot of evidence when you get into a crash.
Especially good in Russia. There's a lot of hit and run accidents. You need that dash cam.
I think the master coins cost 1,000 Dash to set up. When I went into the community, I was like all for it. I was going to do full nodes for them and everything. I just got a lot of trolling. And I was just kind of there to help. And one of the community members invited me in. And I was all for it. And I did install my own full node on a Raspberry Pi for Dash. But then there was just like particularly this one guy on the forum who was a masternode operator who was dead set against my project, because it basically put him out of business. Because if anyone could then become, because the point is that my understanding, or at least at the time, was that anyone could be a Dash masternode. You didn't actually have to own the coins yourself. You just had to have the public key. So someone else could just buy the coins for you, right? And you could just have it custodially on your thing, but you wouldn't be able to have full control over those coins. So the idea was like I could give some masternode to Alakanani in Botswana, and she could just make herself some money running this masternode. But he was like dead set against it. And I remember Amanda B. Johnson then started trolling me completely without provocation. She just started tweeting me on Twitter quite publicly, going about how the full node project is stupid. It's like, I find it really difficult to understand how you could be so critical of somebody giving up their time for free to build full nodes for people across the world to try and spread awareness. And essentially education is decentralization. Once people understand how this stuff works and they lose their fear of the technology, you've achieved decentralization, which in my view is Bitcoin's most important component. And of course, Dash can process a payment really cheaply. Every altcoin can. So can Litecoin, so can Feathercoin, so can Paycoin and all those other scam coins. But that's because they're not being used. They're only being used by speculators and exchanges. In fact, in most cases, it's just exchanges, because speculators keep all their coins on Poloniex anyway. They never take them off. So it's, of course, it can process a transaction much quicker. But taken to its corollary, if Roger Ver wanted to take Dash to where he wants to take Bitcoin, he would still bump up against the same problems. He would still have the issue. You're still going to need several gigabytes worth of blocks, every minute. And you're just not going to be able to achieve that. So all he's doing is jumping from one bandwagon to the other, and then he'll get pissed off with Dash, and then he'll start promoting another scam, and he'll jump onto that ship. And I think what him and Gavin Andresen are really just trying to do is really what their agenda is. They don't like Bitcoin Core, so they just jump on all these other projects as a way of, discrediting Core. But you're not comparing like for like. You're not comparing apples with apples. So,
is it possible that they'll develop some kind of a Dash Unlimited or a Dash Classic that could solve these problems?
Okay, you can't change the laws of the universe. A blockchain is a linked list. Okay, it's a linear list, a linear array, and there is only so much bandwidth. What you're complaining about when you're saying that the transactions aren't fast enough is you're complaining about the scarcity of bandwidth. The fact is that, the copper wires that run underground, the fiber optic cables, and the satellites that do a little bit of bandwidth load balancing as well across the world are just not there yet. We just don't have that kind of throughput to put thousands of transactions if what you're looking for is global settlement finality, right? What Bitcoin gives you for $1.26 or whatever that chap said from Epicenter Bitcoin, he was complaining because this transaction cost him $1.26. Well, first of all, be grateful that you got in on the ground floor in an investment that has basically risen, hundreds, orders of magnitude since you bought in. So I'm sure you're grateful for that. So I'm sure you're going to overlook a dollar here or a dollar there on your payment fees. And second of all, what you're paying for is you're paying for global settlement finality. And you don't get that with Visa, and you don't get that with MasterCard or Western Union or even PayPal. They all have chargebacks. And we're not saying, well, I don't know many people that are saying that Bitcoin should replace those things, right? Because you're comparing apples and oranges. Like, Visa is a transactional system. It's almost like an IMAP server, right? Really what it's doing is it's relaying messages across the network like an email server would relay messages across the network. But it's not a currency in its own right. And it's certainly not a strict, rigorous order of events that the whole world cannot disagree on. Like, the whole world can't mathematically disagree on. And I think what poses a threat to a lot of these businesses like Coinbase, who perhaps achieved quite a lot of upfront funding, and they've got term sheets, they've got to meet certain metrics by the end of each month because they have to go in for meetings with their VCs, is that they see ideas like Lightning Network and they think, well, shit, you know, if this thing gets pushed through, then you don't really need us anymore. You don't need these kind of third-party, you know, solutions. People can just spin up their own kind of open source versions of this, take a lot of this stuff off chain. I mean, you're still using Bitcoin, you're still using the primitives behind Bitcoin, but you're just choosing not to put every single thing in the block at the same time in order to increase capacity. And that's you know, an existential threat to their business model, because they wanted to be able to provide that service. Now, okay, I mean, that's just bad entrepreneurialism. I'm sorry. I mean, you got in too early, you raised too much money. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe try something else. Try a different business.
Yeah, it's called a pivot. I mean, it's called a pivot.
Yeah, it's called a pivot. It's called a pivot. It's like fail fast, you know, fail early. And that's what you just need to do. I'm sorry that your business model didn't wake out, but the universe doesn't owe you a favor. I'm sorry that the bandwidth across the world just hasn't reached symmetry yet. You know, I'm in the States right now, and my cell phone has 20 megabytes up and down on AT&T, and at home on our broadband connection, I get 0.5 megabyte upload and I get about 10 megabytes down. So my cell phone is currently, you know, over 20 times faster than my home broadband in England. And it's just, that's the way it is. And when I went to South Africa, the internet was terrible. And apparently in other parts of Africa, it's even worse. So
well, remember, you're going to need that in the US to access all of our video streaming services, because you need to stream video all the time.
With all the ads on TV, I might add, which pretty much makes... I tried watching The Walking Dead the other day. It was completely unwatchable. You had one scene, advert, another scene, advert. I'm like, how do people even...
That's why you get TiVo. You get TiVo, you record it earlier.
They don't let you fast forward. So they're just asking people to torrent stuff anyway.
It's been years since I watched a show being broadcast. So, you know, I got to say, I agree with you, what you're saying about you know, the failed business models and stuff, but I'm not too worried about it. To me, it looks like kind of like pebbles hitting an immovable mountain. Bitcoin is so much more powerful than a lot of people think it is, and these type of attacks, it's anti-fragile. And I'm just watching XT, Classic, Unlimited. It ain't gonna work. You can't trick people that really care about something and are smart. You can't trick them. So it's just you know, these altcoins and stuff. That's just a bunch of speculators, and it's going to crash later. You can't trick people into using your shit if you have open source software and you have money at stake. And all these companies, I think it's great. I think they should spend their money to try to change Bitcoin into something that will make their business succeed, because they're just going to fail over and over and over. And after every failure, Bitcoin will come out that much stronger.
The chat's reminding us of other delicious treats, including Twinkies, Oreos, peanut butter. And the chat also says that Amanda B. Johnson is very attractive. So congratulations to Amanda. While we have Chris here, do you want to just go over some of the issues we talked about? We talked about Craig Wright and his Satoshi patents. Do you think Craig Wright is Satoshi?
No, either no, or he is like the best actor in the world and he pulled off a double bluff. So he basically deliberately acted stupid to make us think that he isn't Satoshi when actually he is. That's the only plausible explanation I could come up with to read any... Did you hear the recording that GQ magazine released of him? After this was not so long ago now.
No, I haven't heard the recording.
Yeah, look it up. Look it up on your favorite search engine that doesn't invade your privacy, and you will find that GQ released the audio recording they made, the raw copy of the audio recording of him in a room with John Matonis and Nicholas Courtois, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, from UCL, the University College London here, I almost said here in London, back where I was in London, who's a really smart professor at London University. And, him and Craig Wright are like having a bit of a face-off, having a bit of like a, bravado. And Nicholas is basically saying, look, my students have been able to create this bug before in OpenSSL in order to prove what you allege to have proved. And he basically shouts and says, stop making me jump through hoops. Why are you making me jump through hoops? Well, you're claiming to be Satoshi Nakamoto. I mean, we're just asking you to sign some things for us. So that was really funny. The only thing I can think of in his favor, like just to be in his defense, because I think it goes without saying that the guy's a bit of a nut job, but the only thing I could think of to say in his favor was that maybe he is Satoshi and he deliberately played a fool so that we wouldn't ever believe that he's Satoshi. That's the only thing I could say in his defense.
Our theory is that he actually is the fool, that he's the Fredo of the group. He has some evidence, but not all evidence, some of the keys, but not all of the keys. He's just, he can prove some things, and it's impressive because, I can't prove anything. I'm not involved at all. But he can prove something. We just have to see how that goes. Let's see, Gabe, did you want to add?
He can't prove nothing. He can't prove nothing. I agree with Chris. I've already brought it up before that I think that, Craig Wright, the only plausible, either he's a complete troll, which seems very plausible, or there's a tiny fraction of a chance that he's actually Satoshi and he's trying to shunt off some attention by posing to be playing the fool, posing being a jackass like Gavin.
Once again, back to Fredo. He's got nothing, Mike. But he can bang cocktail waitresses 2 at a time. So he's got that. Issue 2 was the Bitcoin price surge. Chris Ellis, what do you think about 1,200? Are we going higher? Is the ETF going to be approved?
Yeah, I think that this whole thing is obviously being fueled by the ETF, and obviously hitting the gold price is a psychological point, I think, for a lot of the Forex traders who probably spend a lot of their time watching Bloomberg and staring at candlestick charts every day. So for them, I guess that's a psychological price point.
That's called romance. That's why they're called candlesticks, romance.
Right. Not because of the Japanese Osaka. Yeah, okay. Not because of all that. Okay. I think that it's being fueled by the speculation on the 25-ish, 30% chance that the ETF is going to go through. And then when it doesn't, I'm expecting it to crash. I could be wrong. But this smacks of a buy the rumor, sell the news. Bitcoin has always been a very narrative-driven economy where we'll tell ourselves a story and it gets very narcissistic and people start buying just because they believe other people will with the same information. And when that eventually expires and when, the news comes out, people just dump it, and they sell it down. So I hope that we're going to get $2,000 and maybe we pull back to 1,200 or something of that order. That's kind of what I'm expecting, but famously I don't make predictions and I never will.
And that Fredo news is a fact. You guys could watch Godfather 2 if you want to verify that. Fredo has interests. People are asking if this is live. Yes, it's live. I'm just not looking at the chart right now. Last chart I saw, 1274, 1284. People are saying 1290. I believe them. Let's try issue 3 on Chris. What do you think about Gavin and Bitcoin Unlimited? Are you an Unlimited fan?
No, not really. I mean, I don't mind. It's an open source project, and Amir Tarki is a guy who once wrote and created the Bitcoin improvement proposal, which you can just type that into DuckDuckGo or another favorite search engine that doesn't snoop on you. And he built the first Bitcoin improvement proposal that then Luke Dash Jr. took over and bit number 2. So there was always an established process for how you want to make changes to Bitcoin. And I am a big fan of that process. And I understand that the businesses in Bitcoin have some outstanding grievances and issues, which I have been following. And I have done some transcription work for some of the interviews that we did on Whalepool TeamSpeak and so on. But I find the whole thing, the saying that if you fight with a pig, you end up getting dirty in any way the pig enjoys it. This is kind of how I feel with the block size debate. There really isn't very much point. I can't say a lot. Or I can try and be absurd and I can be really, dry and absurdist on Twitter. That's all I can really do. But nothing I say is really going to help anyone learn anything. I think part of what's causing this rift, it's helpful to not see this as an exclusive problem with Bitcoin itself and the community. It's helpful if we look at how politics and other industries have been affected by short form media like Twitter, which has created divisiveness and has divided communities and divided teams before. And part of the problem is that Twitter creates this culture of subtextualism, and I think this kind of, and Reddit as well, this culture of people who just read headlines and comments, but never read the article itself, or a very small proportion of them will. And as a result, nuance is dead, and truth, forget it. Fact checking, what is that? What is fact? We're post-fact. We're living in a post-fact world.
They got rid of all the card catalogs. I'm not even sure where you look up information anymore.
Right. So what is required is a renaissance in the fourth estate, and what we need is a complete overhaul of journalism itself. And everyone needs to understand that, as well as being your own bank, you need to start being your own journalist, because what you're reading now are publications. You're not reading reportage anymore. You're not reading, in the old days, of course, that's what it was called, reportage. Now we call it long form content. Like, oh, boring. It's like a Medium post is about as long form content as you're going to get. And even those Medium posts, normally they're just there to spark controversy, because it's about driving hits. It's about getting eyeballs on the screen to get conversions, to sell advertising, or to promote some kind of agenda that you have, some company or thing that you're involved with that you want to promote. And as a result, truth is irrelevant. It's not that it's not there, it exists. It's just irrelevant. Sometimes the truth is used as a weapon to hurt people. Sometimes it's just ignored completely. What's important is that your message is convenient, that it drives an agenda that you're pursuing. So there really isn't very much point in trying to get into a debate with Roger Ver or any of his sock puppet accounts, or any of the sock puppet accounts, frankly, that I see also coming from some of the Bitcoin Core side. Because the thing I love about Bitcoin Core, as opposed to the other altcoins, is that they are completely, it's just a ragtag bunch of people, how do you say, a completely distributed group of people who all have overlapping and dissenting opinions. It's not called a motley crew. Thank you. That's exactly what I was thinking of. It's a motley crew, and that's what gives it its strength. There is no central power. There is no kind of like person pulling all the strings. Like, even when you go in some of the chat rooms, like the Slack chat room, you might think to yourself, well, maybe Drax the guy pulling the strings, or maybe Acnix is the guy pulling the strings, so whatever. But actually, that's not true. They all disagree with each other. They're always fighting all the time, and I like that. I think that's healthy. I think that's good. Because when you look at Ethereum, the problem with them is they're far too organized. They're so organized they could even coordinate a hard fork, because a couple of them got butthurt when they over-invested in the DAO, and it's like, oh, Vitalik, please, Vitalik, can you just roll it back?
In my interview with Vinay Gupta, he specifically confirmed that viewpoint as being a major driver behind them letting the DAO get out of control.
Which is fine, but then why use a blockchain? Why not just use the sharded Oracle database? I mean, why use a blockchain? It doesn't make sense.
So that's to basically hoodwink investors, I think, is the main reason.
Okay, all right, fine. Look, if you want to shaft a bunch of VCs out of their money by using blockchain as like this buzzword thing, I think you're a little bit out of date. I think you need to start using distributed ledger space and Corda now, which is what R3 are calling theirs, and IoT. Don't forget the Internet of shit, Internet of Things.
Internet of hackable things.
Internet of hackable things, yeah. Teddy bears that get hacked and leak, kids' stories, bedtime stories.
That used to be cyberpunk fiction, and now it's just normal.
If you can dream it, we can hack it.
Right. So yeah, I don't see the point. I think we're working on different projects, and if Roger wants to work on a project to recreate these, I'm all for it. I don't have anything against the guy personally. I mean, the only thing that annoys me about Roger is that I hear far too much of his opinions, and I know my Twitter feed gets drowned out because even the people that disagree with him keep reiterating things that he said, and it's like, I'm trying to get a different viewpoint here, and all I keep hearing about is this Roger guy who owns Bitcoin.com, and it accuses this other guy that has our Bitcoin, of censorship, and yet he owns Bitcoin.com. I mean, I don't know. It just feels like a land grab, and people are trying to lay claim to owning this or that or the other. I don't think Core owns Bitcoin. I think that the miners and the users and the exchanges tend to follow Core's updates because they favor conservatism over radical change, and particularly contentious change. Because like Satoshi said, if you have a hard fork, you've got to send out a serious warning to people that when you fork the UTXO set, you persist the existing UTXO set at time 0, essentially you're going to have two currencies for 100 blocks. And in that 100 block interval, you've got to decide, which, well, the safest thing to do is nothing at all during the hard fork, right? The safest thing to do is to leave your coins on a wallet that you control, not on Coinbase, not on some other exchange you may decide to go with a particular version or not. Because what happened with Ethereum was Ethereum did a lot of backroom deals. The same way it happens in DC, the same way it happens in Parliament in London. It's all about the lobbyists. It's all about the back channeling. It's all about going behind closed doors, talking to exchanges, saying, look, we have a problem. Big investor of ours overinvested in the DAO. It's gone tits up. We need you to put this patch in, but just don't tell the users, or certainly don't give them a choice, right? So we just need you to patch this update. Is that cool? Cool. Okay, Poloniex, hi. Yeah. Bit of an issue. Big millionaire guy. He's on our case. He's lost a lot of money on the DAO. We're just wondering, could you just put this update through for us? Yeah, the miners are totally on board. We've got them on Skype right now. They're all for it. Great. Okay, and they're BTR, and they call everyone else. And then all the users, they just log in to Bitfinex, so they log into Poloniex. It's like, oh yeah, there's my Ethereum trade. That's cool. They're in my Ether. Oh, look, they're still there. But you're on a different chain now because you didn't own those Ether, because you didn't own the private keys. The exchange owned the private keys. The exchange gave you an IOU. But in the background, they changed the version because there was a big dog, some fat cat. He owned a shit ton of Ethereum, and he got pissed off when he lost his money in the DAO investment because he was dumb enough to invest in something as stupid as the DAO. And now you're paying for it. And now you're paying for it because the exchange has just put you onto a different fork and you had no clue what was going on. And so I'm fine as long as it's all transparent. I'm fine as long as everybody is clear. And if people want to go back Vercoin or Roger Vercoin or however he wants, Bitcoin Unlimited or whatever is next, because he's done a few now. It's like Bitcoin XT, Bitcoin Classic, this one, and then this one will die out and there'll be another one. But what he wants is a lot of Bitcoin has some properties, okay? Some really important, hard to mimic properties, very, very difficult to imitate. One of them is the network effect. It was unanticipated, it was organic. But now that it's happened, it's difficult to imitate that. It's difficult to get another altcoin to have the same kind of price rise, to have that same kind of novelty, to have that same kind of media impact. I just don't think you can repeat it. A lot of altcoins have tried it. Litecoin tried it. Feathercoin to some extent tried it. Ethereum certainly has been probably the most successful in replicating it. And Dash, but if you look at the Dash chart, it's kind of like, somebody having cardiac arrest. It's almost like up, 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 down, up, down. And I don't think another altcoin will be able to really replicate what Bitcoin did without being different, without having the same novelty, but differentiating themselves in a way. And maybe that is Ethereum. And maybe there is something to be said for a centralized version of Bitcoin that the banks can kind of get on board with, and it can be centralized and Lord Vitalik can sort of oversee the hard forking. Maybe that's okay. Maybe that's what we want. And maybe Bitcoin is still there, and Bitcoin will still be there for those of us who care about it, and we hope for a lot of other people across the world. But I don't see what business he has, just sort of shit talking people on Twitter, using his. I just lose respect for him when I see him promoting all these other projects, which to me just look a bit scammy, rather than actually trying to push the science and push the agenda and so on. So yeah, full nodes. Hit me up with a full node question.
And let's remember, as much as we all do like Roger Ver, he is a very nice guy. He's helped Bitcoin out in the early days.
No doubt.
His real qualifications here are that he bought a lot of Bitcoin early.
Right.
Respect to that. He deserves every financial benefit. Not trying to take that away, but at a certain point, we need the experts. We need the core. We need the people who are writing this code to tell us what they think, and that's what we're hearing. We're hearing about Segway. So the chat's going crazy. They say that truth is beauty and beauty is truth, and that's all you need to know besides the fact that Dash has an incredibly attractive spokesperson. They love mentioning
They're
that.
paying. Is Amanda paid by the pre-mine money? Does anyone
Absolutely.
know?
There's it now, again, I think it was clever at the time. I think it's clever still, but Dash has part of its currency reserved for promotion. They vote on it. They voted her as the spokesperson. She gets, I don't know, a couple grand, I would hope, a month to promote them. And if she held it in Dash, it obviously went up. I hope she did well. I don't know the details about that. I just know they have that set aside. People also wanted us to talk about Ethereum. Chris got a little of that going there. But I want to circle back, and I want to talk about the future of journalism while you're here, Chris, because there's been two major developments in journalism. Neistat, the famous YouTuber who started out making videos on his iMac, then he made video blogs for about 2 years straight, has millions of subscribers. He's joined forces with CNN. And Casey says he's going to present a new app, a new website with CNN, with live news feeds, and that this is going to solve the news problem. On the other hand, we have Philip DeFranco, very popular YouTuber, 5 million subscribers, something like that, does a kind of daily news show right now. Very fair. He says what the issue is, then he gives you his opinion. He's also working on a news channel. Chris, do you think either of these guys, Neistat or Philip DeFranco, will be able to change news? Or will we see someone like PewDiePie, who already has 55 million subscribers, 10 times of either of these guys? Will he just become news? Are we going to an app? Are we going to a person? Where do you think we're going to go, Chris? And then we'll ask Gabe as well. Same question.
It's not news. What you're talking about is entertainment. So when you're talking about news, as in new, something that's new and fresh, what you're really talking about is someone who's reading out the headlines, but they're defining for you what that agenda is, as opposed to, say, something like Twitter or Facebook, where you have a curated timeline, where that corporation like Twitter or Facebook will, to some extent, have a two-way. So it's a more symmetrical relationship. When you watch MSNBS or CNN or any of these channels, what you're getting is a one-to-many transaction. And you're basically being fed whatever you're being fed. And to some extent, I guess you could argue that as a consumer, you are feeding back into the news cycle. But let's be honest, they're basically reporting to the news that they're being told by their editor-in-chief, who's being paid by a publisher. So if it's the FT, it's Pearson PLC that's giving you the news. If it's Bloomberg, then it's Bloomberg that's giving you the news. If it's Sky, then it's Murdoch that's giving you the news, right? So it's whoever really can afford to buy that infrastructure, the hubs and spokes infrastructure, to do a one-to-many broadcast. Then you have Twitter and Facebook, where to some extent there's some symmetry. To some extent, they will learn from you as a corporation. They have a profit motive. They have shareholders. That they're not just there to be evil and spin things, and they don't necessarily have that kind of agenda. But they are still very powerful, especially Google as well, because Google is the de facto index of the internet, the table of contents for the internet for most people. And as a result, what comes up first, what gets filtered, tends to be what surface, the term is used as surfacing, will tend to affect the decisions that you make. If you affect the information in a system, you affect the beliefs of the entities within that system, you affect the beliefs, you affect the actions and the prices of commodities and so on and so forth. Whereas what I'm really looking for is an any-to-any or a many-to-many. And also what I'm looking for is the return of reportage, fact-checking, revision-controlled journalism, which is a concept that Charlene and I have been working on, which is this idea that when I write an article, as I write that article, I commit my changes iteratively to a GitHub repository, or not necessarily GitHub. GitHub is one example, but to a local Git repository, and I make timestamps periodically. And what I do is every time I make a discovery or every time a source comes to me with information that my arguments in my thesis or my reportage will rely on, I make sure that I timestamp it, I sign it, and I make it tamper-proof, right? Because it's been signed and checkpointed in the Bitcoin blockchain. So that when I eventually come around to publishing it, should someone have a disagreement, a dispute, or just want clarification, they can approach me and I can show them the source material. I could publish the source material if that's okay with everyone, but sometimes, often in journalistic circles, we don't do that kind of thing. Like normally a journalist would never ever disclose who their source is, right? Because that's otherwise no one would ever trust them ever again. No one would ever come to them with any information. So journalists are always very careful to protect their sources. But I could see a future where, for example, If you were a human rights, if you're a journalist who had a mind for human rights, and you observed a human rights violation, and you wrote an article that could prove it, and you had sources, and this was very sensitive, these people, their lives could be in danger if their identities were revealed, you could give them a pseudo-identity, or you could take some evidence of their identity, and then if you wanted to prove to the public, you could simply agree to meet with an organization like Human Rights Watch or Amnesty International or another news organization, and you could say, right, here is my source material, please sign my commits, and say that you can see that the evidence that went into my article was in fact the evidence that I found, contemporaneous with events. And they will be able to sign the commits that you made before you put out the final piece. And people will then have to reach a level of settlement. Settlement is basically when you say, okay, I agree that this article is faithful, that it is truthful, that it is fact checkable. And where in certain outlier cases we're not allowed to disclose the names and identities of certain individuals, I think the method I just outlined, that specification there, that works perfectly. You can do it right now. You can download Git, and you can timestamp the Git commit hash into the Bitcoin blockchain.
Excellent. Gabriel Devine, do you have any thoughts on the future of journalism?
Yeah, I love Chris's idea about using Git as a timestamping method for the revisable truth, and the idea that you're so transparent that even all the complete history of your edits on exploring a topic are totally public. I think that is the future. The future is transparency. As I outlined in blog posts from a couple 3 years ago, futurerant.tumblr.com. Ubiquitous surveillance is the inevitable future that we're all hurling toward. And what I mean by ubiquitous surveillance is not that, the powers that be, are going to be, it's a panopticon where they're all going to be looking at our every move. I think everyone's going to be able to look at everyone's moves all over the place, and you got your Internet of Things is going to be so incredibly hackable that if you have a blank spot in there, they're going to try to grab it. Hackers are going to try to grab it, and the more time goes on, the more transparency there's going to be, until our quaint 20th century concepts of privacy will seem as outdated as a wooden club with spikes in it as a weapon. But as a result, I think, everybody and his mother is going to be what we might call a reporter or journalist today. That's already, of course, happening with social media. And I'd like to point out the other side of the equation that Chris didn't have time to get to, which is you've got the one-to-many model of traditional what we call now legacy media, since it's already less popular than the Bitcoin group and other what we used to call
only right now.
Yeah, right. What we used to call alternative media. I think that legacy media as a one-to-many, and then you've got this sort of hybrid model of centralized social media. And I think we're going to start seeing the decentralized social media projects mature over the next 10 years, and we're going to have a lot of traffic on those platforms as we figure out how to moderate, as we figure out how to integrate funding into those situations where on top of the existing advertising and affiliate models, we're going to see micropayments. I still believe that micropayments will be huge, but they're going to have to fit into how our culture works, and it's going to be a two-way street there, where it might seem gauche at first to give somebody tips, but then then maybe over time it'll be seen as wonderful and supporting and undermining systems that encourage lies. So I think we're going to see a lot of really fast development over the next 10 years in how we communicate with each other and how we conceive of journalism. I'm really excited about that. And I think there's wonderful things in store. It's amazing. I think we're actually in the middle of a tipping point right now, and it's wonderful. I think it's really exciting. We're going to see a lot of terrible things happen. We're going to see a lot of problems, but we're also going to see a lot of really shocking things. Pizzagate is just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a massive pedophilia network. In fact, I'm it's quite clear from the number of arrests that are going totally unreported in the legacy media over the last 10 weeks of arrests in pedophilia and many other scandals. The financial stuff has been coming out over several years, but we've only been getting trickles because of the stranglehold that mega corporations have had on the media traditionally, and that's crumbling and falling down. We're going to see a lot of sacred cows being slaughtered, more than most people realize. I think a lot of traditional science, we're seeing psychology crumbling under the weight of just simple sunlight being placed on the scientific papers, and how they're totally not replicable. So like the entire quote unquote science of psychology is being undermined by the truth. We're going to see the same thing happen with physics, in my opinion. We're going to see the same thing happen with a lot of other areas that have been captured. That capture, the grip on it has been shaken so deeply already last year and so far this year. And I think that process is going to continue. It's very welcome.
All right. Well, before we cover all that, I wanted to loop back, and I wanted to kind of warn Philly D and Casey Neistat against sensationalism and emotionalism. I know right now that the news in the US is very filtered, and we're not even talking about political filter. I'm talking about they don't show dead bodies on TV. So if you start showing dead bodies on either of these two alternate news sources, you're going to be radically different than US television. I don't know how you're going to do that. If you're going to be emotional, if you're going to be sentimental, how you want to influence this, how you're not going to wear people out with the constant replication of more bodies. But that's an obviously entry point. I don't know if that's where they want to go, but that is an idea. And then I also wanted to talk about something Gabe talked about universal surveillance and about the idea of being good all the time because someone's watching you. There's a book by David Eggers that he wrote in 2013, but I just got to it last week. There's going to be a movie with Tom Hanks. It's going to be really good, and it's called The Circle. And
wait. The movie might suck, but yeah, go on.
The movie might suck, but I'm hoping that the exploration of ideas will be good. I read the book last week, and the ideas are there. The ending's even interesting. The girl is very ambitious, and it's basically about a world that Gabe is talking about, a world where there is no privacy. A world where you don't ever step out of line because there are cameras everywhere. Maybe you're even wearing a camera around your neck.
That's why cryptography is so important. That's why we focus so much on crypto. It's the World Crypto Network. It's not the World Bitcoin Network. The cryptography is precisely that most important technology for empowering the individual against this type of situation. And but I don't know if it's a winning battle. Maybe.
And that's what The Circle feels like, is that it, to some degree, not to spoil anything, but it's not a winning battle. The circlers can make the cameras so small that they wear them around their necks. They get politicians to agree to go clear, which means no more backroom dealings, no more dirtiness, which seems like a good thing, but it also takes away their privacy. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but James, who did the World Bitcoin Network, is working on a new congressional project where he basically said that having secret votes protects the government. And this is a very contrary position. A lot of people can't get this. The sunlight is the best disinfectant argument. People want to apply that to everything. But what James has noticed is if you have the private votes all public, you can now judge how well your senators responded to your lobbying. You can have a perfect report card and you could say, Senator, this one is an A, Senator, this one is an F. Whereas if that was a secret ballot, they could change their mind. They could choose to support their people instead of who they're paid for. So I think both of us.
You can't have darkness without the light, though. That's the thing, is the shadows are cast by light. It's an absence of light. So the problem with this is that we need privacy is the permission that the civilization will give you to find out who you are, right? And if you don't have any privacy, then obviously we're not going to get much in the way of authenticity. Certainly if we don't have anonymity, we're not going to get authenticity. So we do need some areas that are private.
And these people of The Circle, at first it's like, it's techno-libertarianism. It's this good idea. You're wearing the watch and it tracks your steps and it improves your ability to work out. But then they also realize that the other step, that like they're being watched all the time. They can't speak freely. They can't speak critically of anything. They'll be corrected. They'll be fixed. And that this is some of the characters are seeing this as a benefit. They're saying that there is no more crime. And they're saying, one of the characters, he tells a story. He says, my wife, when we first got married, we were very young. My wife said, whenever you go somewhere, think of as if I'm always there with you. And certainly this is going to stop a lot of extramarital affairs, and it's going to keep a lot of marriages together. But it also has this kind of big brotherism to it, where you're always thinking that you're being watched. You're never going to borrow something and return it later, even though there'd be no damage. One of the characters borrows a kayak and takes it out and brings it back. There's no damage done. But to this system where everything must be shared, there's a horrifying damage. And if you turn your camera off, if you're not recording, if you're not bringing in data, you're not helping the collective group, which believes the more data, the better, right? Whatever the problem is, the more data, the better. And they take that to an extreme level in the circle. And I'm very interested to see how the film plays. And if you guys want to check out the book now, it's certainly available. But these are interesting ideas. So more to add, or we move on to issue 4?
Chris has more to add.
Quickly, I just want to say something quickly about attitudinal journalism. So what you're talking about with Tweety Pie, okay, that's called attitudinal journalism. And I certainly don't have a problem with it, so long as it's contextualized, as long as you have a wide array of attitudes. So nothing wrong with op-eds and people opining and doing all of that stuff. That's all fine. But what you do need is you do need a lot of people to do that in order for an average person that doesn't, because remember the essence of journalism is verification. What you're really doing is you're diving deep into the facts, the muck, they call it, the muck rack. You're going through the muck and you're digging through the dirt and you're finding the pieces, the nuggets. And the citizens and the ones that you have a duty of care to, the people that are reading your work, basically don't necessarily have the kind of time at their disposal to do the kind of research that you're doing. So that's your service to them. That is what you're paying them. The problem that we have at the moment is really a problem with the business model, is that consumers expect things to be free. Sorry, I should say, as a consumer, I expect things to be free, but as a professional, I expect to get paid. And so in our role as consumers, we want to drive down costs. In our roles as professionals and entrepreneurs, we want to drive up the costs. And what's winning at the moment are the consumers, because there are more of them than there are of the actual entrepreneurs. And as a result, we have this kind of imbalance in the economy where my landlord has extra rights to levy rental charges, because if I don't pay the rent, I get kicked out. But as a journalist, I don't have that same rentier kind of power. I don't have that power to extract the money from you for reading my article, watching my video on the internet, because there isn't a way that I can enforce it. And so eventually, I don't know where all the pieces are going to land. They're all kind of up in the air. What I would like to see is, yes, attitudinal stuff like you're talking about, but that's not going to solve the problem of fake news. What we really need are fact checkers, people that do the research, kind of like what WikiLeaks started out as. We need more WikiLeaks. We need more people doing that kind of work, where you're getting those data dumps, you're doing the hard work of going through that data, and you're surfacing it, because there are lots of responsibilities in journalism. It's not just the stuff you just discussed, but what about the names of victims of sexual abuse? If you're just not a professional journalist and you're just doing the citizen journalism thing, and you just release somebody's name before you've done a proper fact check, and then that person ends up becoming public? What if someone's accused of a very serious crime, you name them, and then they end up being vindicated, and they end up being found not guilty, and now you put this person's name out there into the world.
Or what if BuzzFeed gets a document and then they publish the whole document, and it's so sensational that now we can't even look at the parts of it that are true, because the sensational parts outweigh everything else? Yeah.
Right. So but a lot of the professionalism of journalism is going to be lost in this brave new world that we're entering into.
And we're looking to Philly D and Casey Neistat to save us from that. That's a lot of pressure, guys. So good luck. Finally, our 4th issue today, Chris, we talked a little bit about blockchain capital. Bryce Pierce's company, or Brock Pierce, sorry, his company that is starting an ICO. They're going to raise $50 million for venture capital. What do you think about that?
I got to go.
Good night, Gabe.
Wonderful joining you, gentlemen. Fantastic to see you, Chris. Don't eat too many Twinkies. Peace. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Twinkies.
Bye.
You might have to have the Twinkie defense. The court defense, unfortunately, for the murder of Councilman Harvey Milk here in San Francisco.
Oh,
A fellow council member shot Mr. Milk and shot Mr. Moscone, Mayor Moscone, and later claimed that he was on a sugar high from eating 19 Twinkies.
Oh
and
my
the
God.
jury believed it. I'm not sure. A lot of people, Mr. Milk, of course, famously is a homosexual. It's in the film. You can watch it. It's in the books and things. But very sad, but very funny because it's the Twinkie defense. And you can
Twinkies and milk. Okay, see you guys.
Thank you, Gabe. Good night. So we had one more topic. We're going to talk about the ICOs and the VC. I think it's the year of the ICO. I think that Brock's got good lawyers. I think they've checked this out. I think it's going to go smoothly. I think they're going to raise the 50 mil. What do you think, Chris?
I don't know much about it. I'm just looking up now. So what, he's raised this money already or what?
Well, I mean, when you put this kind of thing out, you assume he says he's raising 50, but you got to figure he's got 40, 45 already committed. But the idea is pretty simple. There's been only a couple of articles. We don't know any technical details. But the idea is similar to Augur or Lisk or any of these Ethereum, any of these successful ICOs. If you wanted to invest in the venture capital firm, blockchain capital, that's going to take that money, invest into other companies, presumably you would invest in this fund, blockchain capital. Those investments do well. I'm not sure. They do a buyback, or maybe they reinvest the funds into their token somehow, and you profit. So I don't know. This is the future of venture capital.
It's the you profit part I get stuck on. So the way a lot of what is in Bitcoin and its surrounding ecosystem is open source. And the way venture capitalists generally make money is by keeping something on the back end, by having some private server with some secret source algos.
Oh, well, we've seen the Bitcoin pattern. You get Bitcoin, you build a centralized thing like a Coinbase or an exchange or whatever. You attach it.
You build an API and all that stuff.
Yeah, and then pretty soon you can do anything you want because you're controlling the keys and the users aren't. So.
Yeah, but like with ChangeTip, that doesn't last long, right? So the problem is that they're building they're bringing an old archetype to a new system, which is largely reached its efficiency curve in economics, right? There's really no more profits to be made. A lot of this stuff is open source. We're really just talking about recombinatorial innovation now. We're really just talking about taking things that already exist, that are open source, that are obvious in the art anyway, so you wouldn't be able to patent them, and then rearranging them into a different order. I mean, you can file a patent, but good luck enforcing it. Because
well, and I do think this is the angle that they see as a success for their patents. A company like Blockchain Capital has money, is real, is in the United States. I think this is where you'd want your licensing fees for inventing Bitcoin.
I just think that the profit margins are going to drive to zero so quickly. The only people that are going to make money are the people that jump on and jump off very quickly. So yeah, ICOs, look, the way you get in on it, everyone knows this. You look for the NXT pumper dumpers, you look for the Waves ICO people, you find them on social media and you go, well, what are they pumping now? Right? And then you go, okay, well, this guy's pumping this thing. And he pumped NXT and that went to the moon and that's died. And he pumped Waves ICO and that went to the moon. Lisk, this guy was in the Bliss. They're called blue chip shit coins, okay? And these blue chip shit coins basically are built by people that have contacts in marketing, advertising, mainstream media. So they can basically get, your shit coin, your ICO onto, some website or some publication. And the idea is that you get a bunch of insiders onto a Slack channel, into a forum, and you're kind of like looking at it and you're like buying OTC with people over PM and they're accruing some reputation, and it's that guy from NXT and he's selling it to you and all this stuff. And what you do is you buy it up, and then as soon as it hits the exchange, you dump, okay? And the exchange have their own market makers as well. Usually Poloniex has their own market makers, or they certainly have customers that they're in contact with who are, big customers. And so what happens is, there's a little bit of a pump, and that pump helps the people get their exit. If you saw Golem, you saw the way that worked. So you have a little bit of a pump, and then all the people that bought before the ICO, they sell into that strength. And then all the newbies start carrying the bag, and they have to average down as the price eventually goes to nothing for a very long time. And then they sell it at a loss, and then it ends up pumping anyway at some random point in 2 or 3 years because somebody did some article on it. And that's basically how you make your money. But like you're talking about, like a sustainable business model, forget it. No, there is no room for like big, nice lifestyles in cities like London or San Francisco, where the rent is like, upwards of $1,500 a month, and you've got, expensive food prices. You're competing with people that are living in developing countries who have living costs that are really, you think you're going to compete with this? But what about my $10 sushi? Like, fuck you, man. Like, you don't deserve that $10 sushi. I'm really sorry to break this to you, right? But like that $5 latte and that $10 sushi and that gym membership and that cable thing and all this stuff, all these luxuries and those dinner parties and stuff you like going to, it's not going to last. Like, you're basically living off your savings. You're not producing, you're just consuming. I mean, yeah, you're peddling buzzwords, and these buzzwords are very catchy, and other people, start riffing off with you, so you feel like you're part of a crew and you feel like you're right because other people agree with you. But just because other people agree with you doesn't mean you're both right. It just means that you're both agreeing with each other because you both stand something to gain out of this, right? So this idea that you can create these venture capital firms for this kind of money, when we're talking about what is essentially open source software, which will eventually be driven down to a zero margin cost. Well, maybe sustain 2 or 3 people, on a team, a small team, a distributed team working full-time, part-time. But I don't imagine seeing much in the way of like the big profit, the 20-25% profit margins we're used to seeing, say, on the FTSE 100 in the UK or the S&P. I don't imagine we're going to see companies in the future making those kinds of profits, maybe 2-3%. But I think profit, forget it. I think profit's done. I think profit was just an anomaly for a while that we saw.
Well, remember, profit's an inefficiency, right? Profit is the system is functioning too smoothly, right, and there's extra money. That's not good.
No, it's running inefficiently in this. So the reason profit is basically an aberration of when there is an inefficiency in the market that hasn't been corrected, because there's this idea of like the market, hypothesis, which is the idea that every price in the market is a fair price. But the problem with market efficiency hypothesis is that if the market was perfectly efficient, as soon as you went into the market to try and trade, of course, there would be nothing to trade because the market's already discovered a perfect price. So what are you doing? Well, nobody goes shopping expecting to be ripped off, do they? No, you're looking for a bargain. Well, presumably there are bargains, but how can there be bargains if the market has already reached equilibrium? How does that work? So presumably there are inefficiencies in the market. Time. Those inefficiencies can only last for a while. I knew one guy, for example, who was a millionaire because he used to arbitrage the price of potatoes in Holland and London. So he used to buy them in Holland or whatever for one price, and then he used to sell them in London for another price. But he wasn't trading actual potatoes. He was trading the derivatives contracts. So he was just like buying paper potatoes and then selling them from like one buyer over here and then just making a margin. But that only lasted. He basically had to, the way he had to do it was he had like 1 year to do this, to make million, or to make enough money that he never had to work again. So he didn't tell anyone about this arbitrage opportunity. He just kept it to himself and just went to work every day and just did as much trading as he could. And then after a year, other people spotted the inefficiency, came in, drove it to zero, done. And he was like, fine, I got my money, I'm walking off. Same with the ICO market, same with the scam coin market. If they're honest with themselves, all these scam coins, essentially they're just trying to make more Bitcoins. They're using these altcoins to make more Bitcoins and ultimately gain purchasing power. I don't even think that, I used to think they wanted dollars. That's what I used to think. And I think that's true to some extent. But I think what they really want is purchasing power. They don't actually care anymore about what the final thing is, what the final end result is. What they want is a store of value. And I think what Bitcoin has proven now that it's rebounded from 200 from the last 3 or 4 years, 3 years, is that it's proved that it's not just a pump and dump, right? It's proved that it can bounce back and it's resilient. It's like the Microsoft, I keep comparing it to the Microsoft stock price, right? Microsoft went up massively in the 90s, crashed down 50% of its price. It's now broken through its all-time highs again. And Bitcoin has proven the same thing. And good markets, healthy markets grow from failure. And Bitcoin has proved that it can grow from failure. So if Bitcoin crashes again down to 500, or if it goes up to 2000 and crashes down to 900, that will be perfectly healthy. You could safely buy that down to 900 and still be okay, like for a medium to long-term investment. And I think that's very, very good for Bitcoin and its economy. But I don't see, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing like a $50 million ROI. I can't right now conceive of a business like Coinbase or ChangeTip or any of these flybys. I can't see them making back the kind of money that those investors expect to make, like they might have made from Facebooks and Snapchats or whatever in the past.
The chat is not reacting well to our Marxist analysis, but that is basically how you have to think about
what Marxist analysis? I just gave you a pretty.
Although the earlier part about profit and inefficiencies in the system, I'm not sure
that's not a Marxist thing. That's something from efficient market hypothesis. That you could learn that like a Yale course, online Yale course. That's where I got it from.
The capitalists are having an allergy, I'm afraid. Profit.
Well, if Yale
is their holy system,
then I'm Marxist then. But I mean, I learned it by download. I learned economics by downloading courses from Yale. But I know the way I learned it was the markets have inefficiencies. That those are temporal in nature. That they last for a while and then they disappear as more people see them. And yeah, you know, the same thing with the ICO. If you spot a little corner on the web and you see that this little, you know, altcoin people have been involved in these pump and dumps before, and you get in early, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and then you wait for it to list on Polo, and then you dump it on Polo. I mean, that's not Marxist. I'm just telling you how it is. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying that's how it is. And if these people are honest with themselves, they don't want the LISC, they don't want the NXT, they want the purchasing power, and the purchasing power is Bitcoin. That's what's been proven over the last 7 years. That has more longevity than everything else. That's not a Marxist ideology.
And then, of course, it all goes back to the poker playing analogy that if you sit down at the table and you don't recognize the mark is you. But I think we're about running out of time, so we'll go to Chris for a prediction or a story of the week. Anything you want to talk about, Chris, while we're here? We have about 170 viewers still.
Yeah, I see it. Thank you very much for watching. Well, yeah, I'm in the States and might do some traveling around. I haven't decided yet. I'm not going to make any predictions because only fools do those. But I do. Oh, yeah, I suppose I can make a prediction. I suppose I could say that I do expect the market to correct after this news about the ETF, but there are other ETFs. So I await to see what I'm looking forward to is the next narrative. I'm not trading at the moment because I'm mostly working for Bitfinex at the moment. I'm looking into the hack last year, so I'm very, very busy with that. But I can't. I'm not watching the price every day, so I'm interested to know how this ETF thing is going to play out, and then what effect the Bitcoin Unlimited saga is going to have on the price.
Well, I'd just like to thank everybody for watching and giving us a thumbs up or a share, and maybe coming back later and leaving a comment. We had about 170 viewers. That's great, and we went well over time. I think we're well over 2 hours today, but we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.